All right, welcome everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started in the interest of time. I imagine that we'll still have a few more signing on, but we will get started now. So thank you all for being here on time on this Friday post spring break. For those that don't know me, my name is Casey Miller. I am the Career Services Program Director for the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources at the University of Maryland, obviously. So a little bit about my role before we dive in. I am primarily employed by the University Career Center, our central career center on campus, but I work exclusively with the students, faculty, and staff in AGNR. I imagine that we have some students signed on today that are not an AGNR student, so just know that while I will gladly help you, you also have other people in your corner too. So we have a me in CM&S, RHU, SPH, and Info. And then the Central University Career Center is for all students, no matter what your major is. So just know that you have help and support across the board. Today, we have a conversation with Dr. Chris Riley, who is an alum of the University of Maryland. I'm going to let him do his whole spiel introducing himself, but I just want to say first and foremost, Chris, thank you for being here, and we're excited to hear everything that you have to say. So, could you take a moment, give a brief intro, and then share your current role, organization, and a bit about what being a research ecologist means? I know we talked a little bit about that terminology and kind of how
Yeah,
you make
yeah.
that work. Yep.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you, Casey. Thank you all. I didn't realize this was right after spring break. So extra kudos for coming and joining on a gloomy Friday. I will say it's only so fun talking to black squares. So if you feel really brave, you're welcome to put your face on, but no pressure. So as Casey said, my name is Chris Riley. I was a University of Maryland student, graduated back in 2014, which seems like a lifetime ago, but you all will be here before too long, which is pretty nuts. While at Maryland, my major was environmental science and policy. I had concentration in, I think, biodiversity, conservation biology. I did a minor in GIS, and they had just released the sustainability studies minor, so I did that as well. Um, my interests were really sort of split between business and science, and so that's kind of what drew me to ENSP. Science ended up winning out, and it was really a lot of the research that I got involved with while at Maryland. I spent a lot of my first several years, I guess all my years by the end of it, working in the Department of Entomology, doing supportive research and all that good stuff. And so as I made my way through my undergrad tenure there, I sort of figured that I would want to do research and science and all that, as a career. So I had applied for a PhD program, and I got into Ohio State where I did my doctoral degree. Basically graduated 3 months later. I was out in Columbus, Ohio, and moved into my PhD. So my research focus, my dissertation focus was really centered around entomology, urban forestry, urban ecology. The paper says entomology, but I primarily identify as an ecologist and specifically an urban ecologist. Um, and so I know we'll jump around, Casey, and I'm probably getting, all sorts of out of whack, but one of the really cool things while I was in undergrad, working with a faculty member, I had a chance to meet and connect with this company that I didn't know anything about called Bartlett Tree Experts. And specifically, I was interested in using some of the data that they had from their lab side of things for a senior honors thesis that the faculty member helped me connect with. And so that was my chance to, kind of meet the Bartlett lab research team, and work with some of their data, make those connections, get to know them. And so while I was in grad school, though most of my research didn't focus in working with them, I had this kind of side project going the entire time. And to bring us to sort of where we are now in the present, as I was in my last semester out at Ohio State, looking for a job, beginning to look, I didn't really have to look too far because I had that relationship with Bartlett. And so they offered me a position as the lab team began to grow. And so I moved in as a research scientist with the Bartlett Tree Research Laboratories, which is the group I work with today. And yeah, where do you want to take it, Casey? I feel like there's a lot of different ways we could go.
Well, that's kind of
Um,
the perfect segue. My next
okay.
question is going to be, can you provide a little bit of an overview of day to day, like busy seasons in your work? Like, what does your actual work look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, So maybe I'll just share this now because I
Mhm.
know for a lot of folks on the call, you may have never heard of Bartlett Tree Experts. Maybe you've seen the large yellow rigs driving around. For most of the company, whether they're production arborists, plant healthcare specialists, arborist representatives, those are individuals that are based in offices all over the U.S. We have, offices in Canada, in the UK, and they're the ones who are sort of the heart and the soul of Bartlett as a company. What I get to do with a group of my colleagues is work on the lab side of things, so supporting them through research, teaching, training, all that good stuff. So what I wanted to share real quick with you all, this just came out pretty recently from our side of things. Let's see. Okay, cool. Looks like it worked. So, oh, let me just scoot this out of the way. Um, so this is sort of the full extent of our research team for the Bartlett Tree Research Laboratories. There's one gentleman tucked up underneath here, but we're at almost 15 PhDs at this point, spanning, the entire United States. We have coverage in Canada, coverage over in the United Kingdom, and our main research lab in Arboretum is down in North Carolina. So you see a lot of folks down here in green. That's our primary base for research, but as the company has grown, we've moved to more of a regionalized model. And so about 4.5 years ago now, after my first 2 years in Charlotte, I moved up to the DC metro area. And so now I focus primarily in the mid-Atlantic, doing research, technical support, training, and all that good stuff. And then as part of that partnership, I work really closely with this organization, Casey Trees in DC, who I'm guessing maybe some of you are familiar with. I had not heard about them when I was an undergrad, but they do a lot of really cool work planting trees across the district, something like 4,000 or 5,000 plus trees a year. They're focused on urban forest conservation efforts. They try to drive policy change and whatnot. And so I collaborate with them, sort of serving on the interface of research from the urban forestry side and the arboricultural side for Bartlett. So what does a typical day look like? One of the things I love about this job, there really isn't much of a typical day. It's incredibly variable from day to day, week to week, season to season. So I guess I can just stop sharing that. If you guys have questions, happy to answer them. But yeah, one component of my appointment, if you will, is around research. And so that could be research at our production farm out in Berryville, Virginia, where there's sort of carte blanche to do whatever research is broadly relevant to, tree production, tree care, plant health care. So that can be entomological research, plant pathology, soil science, tree health. So that's highly variable. If you've been involved with research, there's just a lot of variation in what that can entail. Maybe it's collecting data, establishing a trial, sitting behind the computer, working on statistics and whatnot. So that's sort of the meat and bones of what my job entails. But then I spend a lot of time, for better or worse, traveling around both the region and then more broadly, giving presentations to practitioners, other scientists, sometimes the general public on all aspects of tree care, tree health, plant health care, all that good stuff, and also spend a lot of time, sort of doing service for the good of the industry and the broader community. So that might be reviewing scientific manuscripts, serving on committees. I serve on the board of directors for a sort of developing arboretum up in the Philly metro. So there's a lot of variation. I'm often at home or in the area, but I do travel a fair bit in this job just because we're supporting a large area. But that creates a lot of fun in my mind and a lot of diversity from day-to-day tasks and such.
Awesome. Thanks. So talked about present. We're going to go back for a little bit.
Hmm.
Can you provide some background on your career and educational journey, including skills, licenses, certifications, anything like that, decisions you made, and or experiences that led you to the role that you have now?
Yeah, absolutely. So before everyone jumped on, I was saying to Casey, I have a group chat with some of my friends. These are friends that I went to high school with. We all went to Maryland. I'm originally from Silver Spring, so some of you are probably familiar with where that is. And we were just randomly going into those small kind of butterfly effect decisions that led to where you are today. And for me, one of the big ones while I was at Maryland was trying to just go to an info session one night on a study abroad program. So this was a winter term study abroad program to Belize, and about 2 or 3 week sort of deal. This would have been the first fall, my first semester there. And that trip created all the opportunities where I got to interact with faculty in the Department of Entomology that, kind of led me to where I am today. So, as far as that goes, I think trying to take advantage of as many opportunities to connect with individuals has been a really important aspect of my career trajectory and journey so far. I know that's not so much a technical skill, but through taking advantage and part of clubs and organizations, giving opportunity to practice and work on some of those soft skills, which, as I'm sure you all have heard, end up being so critical when you get into the workforce. Um, but as far as technical skills go, I was really motivated by just an interest in trying to obtain as many different sort of experiences and backgrounds as possible. So I was really interested in GIS and remote sensing. And from my vantage point, it seemed like that was a useful set of tools and technologies for ecologists and environmental science, you know, members of those kind of related fields. So I focused on getting experience and background with GIS at Maryland, and then again in grad school, trying to utilize some aspect of that in my career so that I had that skill set if I wanted to go that route. I would say experience and background with statistics. That may not be something, again, I don't know if folks are rolling their eyes, but I remember my first course at Maryland felt like it was a different planet, different language. But by the fifth or sixth class, it became so clear how useful these were in helping kind of, shape my thinking, how I view the world, problems, process data. And what coincided with that was more and more use of the program R. So getting some experience learning how to code my own analyses, and all the transferable skills that come with that. And I'm sure by now, I mean, I've been out for 6 years for my PhD and I don't get to use R as much, but I'm sure I'm behind on what the current technologies and approaches are. So yeah, I would say, depending on your interest, trying to find all the relevant or as many relevant skills and opportunities to get a certification, a credential, a little bit of background, not only so that you can learn what is useful or not, but also get a sense of, hey, is this something that I might want to use or do or incorporate in my job? I would say those have all served me really well, just at different times of life. Um, and then I think, Casey, the one other thing, just want to make sure so it's so hard when you're just kind of rambling, but I
Gotcha.
think the one other skill that I could not emphasize enough would be getting your reps in, so to speak, with public speaking and presentations and all of that good stuff. Um, I know when I was an undergrad, I had to do it in a few courses. It was very nerve-wracking. In grad school, I was really fortunate to be with a professor who spent a lot of time in providing feedback on presentation skills, really focusing when you're communicating something, trying to have a story arc. So how do I bring the audience in? How do I interact with them? And in this role, I'm giving a presentation to an audience at least on a weekly basis. So I don't even lose sleep anymore if I'm getting up to do a talk to like an audience of 200 or something people, because that just comes with the territory. But um, that isn't necessarily a given that you get that skill or those opportunities to practice in your academic career. So finding those opportunities to get in front of people, get comfortable with it, get feedback on it, I think that's been a incredibly important aspect or feature of me kind of getting to where I'm at today, getting all that experience in.
Awesome. I love that concept of like being a sponge, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
get as many different experiences as you can,
Mm-hmm.
and then figure out what makes sense for you from there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you talked about a great combination of both technical skills and those transferable skills that are very much needed and in high demand and can be difficult to continue to practice and gain throughout. Um, Back to those technical skills, you mentioned
Mm-hmm.
some classes that you took. Was there anything else, any other resources that you would recommend students utilize to develop skills in GIS or R or any of the other technical skills that you use regularly?
Yeah, and I guess I shortchanged, some of the biological skills. So part of, ecology is super interesting to me, but I always wanted to make sure that I was developing a biological system skill set that I knew would be employable. And so for me, entomology was an application of ecology, but with a lot of different job prospects because there was an industry side of things. There's government, there's bugs in almost every aspect of life. So having those basic skills in, insect taxonomy, morphology, etc., not a given in an ecological program, but easy to get that skill or those technical skills and then leverage that as an ecologist who knows about bugs. So I would say trying to figure out what systems interest you, whether that's bugs, plants, mammals, what have you, and getting some background familiarity on those systems through coursework. There's so many other sorts of trainings, and I will admit I haven't spent a ton of time diving into all the other ways you can get credentials or certifications. But I would say if I was kind of tasked with finding a new career, that's where I would start. Looking at some of those different short courses, week-long training in statistics, week-long training in this. Those might not be as familiar depending on where you're at in your undergrad career, but looking at different listservs, webinars, all that good stuff. So those would be big. Classes are huge. I know Maryland, well, I don't want to speak too confidently. There was a nice GIS program. I didn't dive into
Dylan.
stats nearly as much, but I'm sure there are offerings there. So yeah, I think, there's probably a lot of different avenues for getting those credentials, those skills. I would not rely just on the classroom. And I think the further you get in your learning, I know I did in grad school. I can't say if I did when I was still an undergrad, but there comes a time where an undergrad classroom can feel a little inefficient for, getting that concentrated learning in something that you might be really interested in. And so that's where finding those extracurricular extracurricular opportunities become so important. So using maybe Casey as a resource for what sorts of things might be out there, which just means, staying plugged in, tuned in to different offerings and opportunities out there.
Yeah, awesome. And yeah, to confirm, there is still an awesome GIS program, both a bachelor's degree and there's a minor as well. So especially any of those students that want to have a little bit more experience, but maybe not the full GIS major, there's a minor, and we have a lot of students that will take that too. Okay, so moving forward, what are
Hmm.
some of the biggest challenges and or biggest rewards that you've encountered in your career?
Oh, yeah. In hindsight, I don't really know if there are a ton of obvious challenges. I think, going through what for me was about 10 years of school back to back was a challenge in some sense when you see your colleagues, your friends, et cetera, moving into the real world, and pursuing other opportunities. But um, I didn't find grad school to be as challenging just because I really enjoyed school. I liked that environment. So there were certain things like, stuck in a room writing all day that were hard, potentially isolating at times. But I would say in my current role or position, one of the biggest challenges is sort of the never-ending diversity of opportunities to do things.
Mhm.
Sort of like being at a buffet, but you're trying to watch your calorie intake, and that leads to some challenges with work-life balance, which I think is really, really important. I struggle with that. A lot of it's self-imposed, but I know my colleagues in academia, um, many of my colleagues in industry, harder to say for government positions, but trying to find that work-life balance gets really tricky the more that you are sort of really deeply invested in the questions or the things you're answering, and you don't necessarily have the tightest boundaries on what your day can look like. So that's a personal challenge for me. It doesn't mean anyone else would feel that way in my specific role. But I certainly didn't work on the best work-life balance in my PhD either. I know grad school is not always conducive to that. So that's probably been the biggest challenge. And smaller projects where you're spending days trying to do a certain analysis can be hard. But um, as far as rewards, I would say there's almost been endless. Something that really motivates me that I learned over time is just trying to help people in different ways and forms. So whether that's finding a new way to try to teach or to educate where you're like, oh, I can really help the light bulb go off, hugely rewarding. If I'm with an arborist on a client's property and they can't figure out what's going on with these trees or this bug or what have you, and I'm able to help bring, some understanding there, that feels really rewarding. Academically speaking, I still feel a nice little dopamine hit when I get a paper out or I'm able to publish something. But I'm less motivated at this stage in my career in trying to rack up awards or accomplishments and whatnot, and really just trying to figure out different strategies to leverage sort of the lab research, the general mission of sort of an industry-based land grant institution in helping and supporting people, internally in the green industry and more broadly than that. So I would say that's probably the most rewarding, just trying to find ways to help people.
Awesome. Love that. Um, quick side quest, because you were saying this and now I'm curious. So sorry,
Hmm.
this is unscripted. Um, do you do much work with University of Maryland Extension? Does that get pulled in? And if so, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I try to do as much work with whoever is interested
Yeah.
in collaborating as possible. So Dr. Mike Raup and Paula Shrewsbury were my big academic mentors. If
Mhm.
you've taken an entomology class, you may have come across them, although I know they're both winding down a little bit, but they both work pretty closely with the extension side of things. Maryland as an institution is known in the green industry for being just an incredible resource. They put out this weekly IPM alert for integrated pest management that growers all over the region, not just Maryland, heavily rely on. So Maryland Extension is definitely viewed as the shining beacon in the area, and I've tried to collaborate with folks that are involved with that. Hey, if I'm seeing this problem in the landscape, here's where we're seeing it. Here's what we're doing about it. And so, yeah, as much as possible, I try to work with extension. There was a new individual hired that I'm blanking on her name, but I think she was replacing Stanton Gill, who passed not that long ago. And I'm going to meet with her out at our research farm in a week or two to talk about this new invasive insect and how we can work together on it. So,
Is her
yeah,
name
lots of
Victoria,
opportunities.
maybe? Is-
Um, I
I'm
don't
asking
remember.
solely because I was just at the Y Research and Education Center yesterday, heard
Yeah.
from an entomologist who is the vegetable specialist.
Hmm.
So it could be the same person. She was lovely, if that's the person.
Yeah, I can't remember.
No worries, no worries. All right, thank you for that. That
Yeah,
was
yeah. Laura
very interesting
Nixon.
information.
Her
Yeah.
name is Laura Nixon.
Okay, all right. So different person.
Yep.
Okay, so back to our originally scheduled programming. Can you talk a little bit about how important networking and or mentorship has been in your career? What strategies would you recommend for building a professional network? And have you had any mentors that had a significant impact on your career?
Yeah, I will start with, I guess, the mentor side first. Mentoring has been incredibly important to my career. I worked my tail off in undergrad and grad school, but even still, like I would not be where I am without having mentors who invested in me, were interested in helping me, supporting me, whether that was, just another grad student in the lab that I worked in, faculty. Um, yeah, there's been countless mentors along the way. I think I was involved in ENSP or AGNR's peer mentor program when I was at Maryland. I was involved with Omicron Delta Kappa, had a peer mentoring program that I tried to create when I was in that. So yeah, I've tried to be as involved and give back because I recognize that so much of my success has come from having those relationships, people taking a chance, people investing in me, and so trying to turn that around and sort of pay it back where possible.
Mhm.
Um, so mentoring's huge, trying to find a mentor, not always the easiest thing, but it kind of spills in with this idea of how do you approach networking? And I wish this was in person because I'd love to hear kind of how each of you go around and approach this idea of networking, which I know can feel like work at times, talking to strangers, maybe low reward potential if you've done a lot of it and you're like, this hasn't gotten me anywhere. And I would say that I get that. I totally get that. In my mind, networking is sort of best mentally set up as, hey, I'm going to be as curious as possible. I'm going to get to learn and meet someone new. I'm not doing it necessarily for my own benefit because you never know where that backfires. But just trying to have a genuine interest in what other people have going on, what they're up to, their academic work, their professional work, all those things. It's sort of how I approach networking, just trying to get to know people. And if it turns into something great, um, if it doesn't, there's no real harm to you. You've just gotten to know someone new, and you really never know when that connection will pay off down the road. And especially as LinkedIn has become, a monster tool for staying in touch with people. Um, yeah, it's really hard to overstate just how much that connection that you make, that you have a very loose connection with, may turn into a job opportunity 5 years down the road because, hey, they have an opening, you're a Maryland alum, they're a Maryland alum, they're willing to take a shot on you. I've hired two research technicians now in my role, and the first one was sort of a no-brainer because I had gotten to know her internally in Bartlett. And on the hiring side, it's so much easier to hire and go with someone who's a known commodity versus kind of taking a shot on a great candidate who you just don't know anything about. And so, yeah, that's sort of the blanket advice. I know you've probably heard different versions of it, but trying to get out there as much as possible, trying to deal with the uncomfortable part of getting to know people, not doing it as best as you're able from a self-interest, but more of like, hey, I'm just a curious person. I want to get to know you, what you're about, and then trying to stay in touch with people. Um, Not always easy. LinkedIn's a great way, right? As a Facebook of the professional world. But having that network, I've seen really pay off for folks when they're inevitably looking for jobs and they're able to tap the network because a lot of people want to help. Not just their own mentees, but if you know somebody, chances are good you probably want to help them because you got helped at some point along the way. So I think just having that um, mental perspective going in will serve you well. And if you find yourself, uh I guess this is kind of like the dating world a little bit, but if you're in a spot where you're like, I don't really feel like I'm the best version of myself today, you don't have to go to that networking event, right? You can save the chance to have that first impression for when you're in a better spot, and chances are good new opportunities will constantly be popping up. So mentoring really important, networking really important. I am where I am today despite all the hard work because I made connections and those connections paid off, uh, from grad school to finding my job in Bartlett, which was the easiest interview of all time because I had known the lab director for 6 years before I was looking for that job. So can't understate that enough.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think that is kind of like an underline to your earlier point of the butterfly effect, right? Like
Yeah.
so often you make a networking contact and that doesn't pay off
Hmm.
until 5, 6, 7 years down the line, right? You have no idea how these connections and these situations could potentially influence the future,
Right, right.
which can be hard to feel, but that was great. All right. Well, while we're talking about the future, where do you see the future of work within this field heading? And what
Hmm.
advice would you give to individuals looking to enter into the field?
Yeah, so I mean, none of us live under a rock. We're all aware of some crazy headwinds that are shaping the workforce right now. I in the last 10 years, I mean, yeah, AI wasn't even a concept when I was an undergrad. So I can't help but feel like I'm already a bit of an old fart and not being as in tune to what that will do to the general green industry. But I will say that for us, and I guess I should step back. When I say the green industry, folks who work with tree care, plant health care, might be turf, might be ornamentals, shade trees, folks who care for the greenery in and around homes, commercial sites, all that good stuff. And then sort of related to that is sort of the urban forestry space, which I will say for both of them, it seems like growth is only going to continue. Now, if gas prices start going through the roof, that's going to affect a lot of things. But generally speaking, Bartlett as a company has grown pretty consistently year over year over year to now where I think we finally got over the $500 million mark. And a lot of the green industry goes that way, right? We're never going to have the boom and bust of, say, the tech industry or other more flashy industries. But if you think about it, people will always have plant material in and around where they live. We're unfortunately seeing more and more weather fluctuations, extreme weather events. I would refer to that as a changing climate. And that, again, for better or worse, will cause stress to trees, whether we're talking failures, limb breakages, or just general stress that needs to be managed. There's no shortage of, again, kind of unfortunately, new and invasive insects, pests, diseases. So there will, if I looked at my crystal ball, probably be continued growth within this industry, just given some uncertainties there. And I would say similar with urban forestry. There's been a ton of money. Under the Biden administration, they had passed this Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA Act, and that put
Mhm.
a record amount of money in the hands of municipalities all over the country to invest in their urban forest resource. So planting, caring, growing, and what we've seen in a lot of new positions that have come as a result of that. Urban forester, urban forest management, arborists in cities. So job prospects, I would say, look good. From a research standpoint, what's been kind of interesting is I know government has seen a lot of different cuts in the current administration. I know a lot of my colleagues in academia have dramatically tightened their ability to bring in new graduate students because funding is less secured, grants aren't on the table. But we are, as a company, are in the process of hiring one or two more PhDs. So the growth is there. It's weird that industry feels like the most stable place because historically academia has been a very stable place to go in, or excuse me, government has and academia has been more so. But we feel like we're in a pretty good position right now. And I would say that from the local office side or the production side, those offices are almost always looking for folks who want to be doing more of the field related research, whether that's, as serving as an arborist, doing plant health care. As an arborist representative, you're doing more of the sales, but also having knowledge of, the plant biology, the pest biology. So I would imagine those positions are all going to keep increasing. The lab side, maybe at a slower pace, just because we're overhead for the company, but current turbulence aside, I would say the green industry is a pretty good place to be if you want to work outside, if you want a career that kind of straddles a bunch of different disciplines. So positive, optimistic, but current uncertainty has to be considered a little bit.
Yeah, perfect. That's great. Thank you.
Yep.
So my last question before I open it up to any students who have questions, we're going to take a look back. So looking back on your career path so far and your entry into this field and everything, what, if anything, would you have done differently?
Tried to think about this one long and hard, Casey, before.
The
I'm sure there's
hard-hitting
a,
questions.
yeah, I'm sure there's a better answer than what I have, but I don't know how much I would do differently.
Mhm.
I will say that I got really lucky in having that connection with Bartlett. They were looking to hire a new PhD. Otherwise, I could have found myself in a place where, I now have this advanced degree, but I don't have all of the uh, industry relevant or field relevant experience to sort of leverage that into a higher um, credentialed position. So I could
Mhm.
have been overqualified for certain things. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of a gamble in every sort of pursuit that you make, but for me, I don't know if I would have done much differently. I really love the job that I'm at. It's basically a university professor without having to write grants and publish or
Yeah.
perish, which is incredible.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that's really good. There's a lot that I got lucky with along the road, but I don't think I would change a whole heck of a lot.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's okay. I have a pretty similar answer to that, so don't
Cool,
worry.
cool, cool, cool.
Yeah, yeah. No,
I screwed up plenty, but I don't know how much I would change on a deeper level there.
yeah, yeah. No, that's perfect. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
So to all of our attendees, this is your opportunity. Please feel free to either come off mute and ask a question, put one in the chat, and I'll ask it for you. But this is your time. All right, Beck, looks like you have the first hand up. Let's go for it.
Not to be a little overeager here, but it was
Love
kind
it.
of funny when I realized, yeah, you have the same concentration I did with the same one of the same minors I do. Um,
Let's go
and
back.
also with bug background, I've worked in a bee lab, that sort of stuff. So that was kind of funny when he
Van
started
Engelskor?
talking. I yes, actually,
I did too for
yeah,
a little bit. Yeah.
but I was in USGS under Sam Drogi.
Oh, cool.
So
Cool.
that's more, I was more on their lab side. I didn't really meet him at all. I only met
Gotcha.
Sam and worked with him. My question is actually about the decision to go straight to a PhD and then the decision to be a research ecologist as opposed to doing the academia route.
Hmm.
Can you kind of talk about why you decided to go straight to a PhD, what shaped that, and then
Yeah.
the decision to leave academia to be a research ecologist instead?
Yeah, absolutely. This might be a little long-winded, but I overthink everything. So I spent like a full summer just thinking about that same equation of do I want to go to school? Do I want to do something else? Um, at the end of the day, for me, what I had gleaned is that I would hit um, a ceiling at some point with just a bachelor's in a biological or environmental science field. So I wasn't exactly sure when that would be, but what I had sort of gathered is that if you get the PhD, you're sort of clearing a lot of those hurdles. You'll be able to do research, run your own lab, be a professor, what have you, and that's where I was pretty sure I wanted to go. And so what led me to do that? So I had that really great personal relationship with Mike Raup and Paula Shrewsbury. I had the ability to talk to them one-on-one, get their sense of what faculty they would recommend going to, because that's, for anyone that hasn't dipped their toe into that world, that's what's a huge difference from an MBA or a JD. You're really applying to go work with somebody. And, depending on how long that is, you're basically getting married to a stranger and hoping that they're, good in the relationship sense. So I was able to leverage that. I had spent a lot of the summer looking at marine biology because that was sort of my split. Do I want to go that route? And I realized I don't know any of these people. I don't know the ins and outs of what they were doing, but I had begun to get a good sense of what entomology was. I liked how bugs and plants were everywhere. It was really relatable. And so I just talked with Mike and Paula. I had put in for a National Science Foundation graduate research fellowship. So I got that, and that sort of opened the door to go wherever you want. And so I found a pretty cool advisor at Ohio State that was doing, to me, what was really interesting work with urban ecology in these post-industrial cities like Cleveland, looking at the conservation value of vacant land. And it sort of ticked all my boxes. And OSU was willing to give me a lot of money to go there. So everything just sort of worked out. And I don't think I would do that any differently if I could again. But again, so much of that was the confidence of, hey, I have a sense of where I'm going and what I'm getting into. So that worked pretty well for me. On the leaving academia side, I was definitely more interested when I was a senior of becoming a professor at some point. Um, if you haven't had a chance to meet Mike, you might not be able to, but I mean, he would give talks on like local radio. He would teach this class in Belize. He would teach a semester or two. He would do research. I was like, oh, this is an incredible job. Everything about being a professor sounds amazing. And then I left and I went to go work at Ohio State with a younger faculty member. And she was incredible, but she was earlier on in her career. She was going up for tenure. She said, I try to take one day off a week if I'm lucky. And I think that is, especially nowadays, after serving on the review committee when OSU was hiring a new forest entomologist, the competition is unreal for a very finite number of jobs. And it's not just that the competition is unreal, but you have to be willing to, um, I would say, sacrifice a lot of your other interest in pursuit of maybe you're just really, really driven by a specific research question. And for me, I like having some other parts of my life that I like to nourish and enjoy. And so industry was kind of offered as a way to have a little bit more balance. Now, I don't know how much I've actually followed that, but um, yeah, so it was motivated by having that advanced degree, knowing that that would be sort of the ceiling I would hit. So I got that out of the way, and then wanting a position where I wasn't focused on writing grants all the time. I didn't have to publish to get to, the tenure position. I still can do those things, but I don't have to now. And also the compensation tends to be better in industry than in the academia side of things. So if I had to work for, say, a big ag company where I was doing a very specific type of research day in, day out, I might not love it as much, but I get to do basically whatever research I want um, without those, hurdles and better compensation package. So it all kind of worked out pretty well.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, who's next? Don't be shy.
I will say if you don't feel like coming off mute, but you have questions later, you're welcome to shoot me an email later. I don't mind connecting or talking more one-on-one if, questions like what Beck asked or anyone has similar types of questions, grad school, careers in industry, whatnot.
This is kind of similar to the last question, but I was just wondering for more specifics. How much of the day, or at least how much of your day-to-day is spent on more about writing and lab work versus outreach and like people work?
That is a hard one. One of the things that I don't make enough time for is writing. I'm chronically behind in trying to actually get some papers out. Um, yeah, it's just that's easy to put on the wayside. So I don't do as much writing as I should and would like to. Um, I would say it's probably 50% research related, whether that's field work, um, working on, experimental design, proposals, talking to folks, and then at least 50% is more people facing, whether that's spending a day with an arborist, looking at their sites, giving a talk to a society or, a garden club or what have you. Um, yeah, it's probably somewhere in that 50-50 split. but that varies a ton by time of year. Usually January to March, there's not as much field work happening, but a lot of societies are having meetings. So I'm usually on the road doing a lot of talks. Summertime, usually out in the field. Wintertime, yeah, it just depends. But the cool thing is, at least in my role, I have a ton of ability to dictate how I want to use that time. So I have some colleagues who would probably spend about 90% of their time doing research, and they more or less can do that. And then I have another colleague who she taught at a Penn State community college for 20 years and then joined the lab, and she does almost entirely extension outreach, working with people versus more of the research side of things. So I like to be somewhere in the middle of that. So we'll say around the 50-50 mark.
Thank you.
Yep.
Charlotte, go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm also an ENSP major, but I'm a marine coastal concentration. I also have a GIS minor. I'm actually in the GIS lab right now. And I also went to Belize with Mike and Paula
That's awesome.
this past winter.
Let me
but
know
they
when you
also...
want my job, Charlotte. You can have it.
It was really fun, but there also is a new professor. And Beck, if you haven't met Dr. Gruner, he's like currently more active in the entomology department, and he's great. But I wanted to ask more related to like independent projects. Like, do you have any kind of experience when you were in undergrad doing personal projects with like GIS or R? And if you did that, do you have any tips for working on that or other things to do to like build your personal portfolio?
Do you mean totally independent, not, with a faculty member?
I just meant more like not class related projects, because sometimes people mention whenever I've gone to info sessions like this, doing projects in the summer on stuff you're interested in, whether with like support of a faculty member or just independently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wouldn't say I did anything independently. So from my freshman summer, I got a job working in Mike's lab and basically worked in his lab most of those years until one summer I had actually, you might be interested or know about the Noah Hollings Fellowship. Yeah. Did you get that? Are you applying?
I'm a junior, but last summer I did the La Penta program, which was just their summer program and not the 2-year program.
Cool, cool. So I did that, but outside of that one summer, I was in Mike's lab the whole time. And so, I was doing independent work in the context of that lab. So, doing some more analyses, probably not doing anything GIS related, but trying to, where possible, get the ability to do stuff independently that was part of that lab or working with a grad student in that lab. I don't remember a ton of it at this point, but at least having a faculty member to kind of guide the direction there and provide some oversight was really helpful for me. But I feel like R was still kind of new when I was in undergrad, or just newer. It wasn't so widespread in its adoption. So anything that you can do would be pretty cool. That's such a lame answer, but yeah, anything that you can find, I think that would allow you to flex those skills without being told like, go do this is it's just going to serve you well long term. I just can't tell you exactly how I found it besides working in a lab where someone's doing something.
Yeah, that's helpful though. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Right, who's next? All right, I have a question while we wait for anybody to either think of a question or gain the courage to ask it. Bartlett,
Mm-hmm.
do you hire for interns and or entry-level roles? Can you tell us a little bit about what it looks like with Bartlett as far as that's concerned?
Yeah. Glad you remember that, Casey, because I forgot.
It's my job.
So we do hire like crazy. If you're looking more at the office side of things, excuse me, they're often looking for folks who would come in, even if you have a bachelor's, they often come in, spend a season, either learning about the production side of tree care. So that usually involves learning climbing, chainsaw skills, how to actually do proper pruning, all that good stuff. And then they usually spend some amount of time on a rig doing plant health care. So, you're doing soil care, pest management, all that stuff. And if you do well in those things, then what most people will do will become an arborist representative, which is that more sales oriented capacity, sales at the intersection of plants and whatnot. So those can be very lucrative positions. I didn't know what an arborist representative was or that concept when I was an undergrad, but if you like people, which is a big if, but if you like people and the idea of navigating people with sales in the mix is intriguing, that can be a very lucrative career pathway. On the lab side, we are hiring. So I actually just closed a position description for another research technician. I was really looking for someone with a master's. In this market, I think I got, some 50 applications, 10 of them had masters. There were 2 PhDs in the mix, but most of our research technicians have a bachelor's. So we have 3 or 4 or 5 down in Charlotte at our main lab. And what's cool is that several of them either started as interns. So we do have an internship program at the lab in Charlotte that just closed too. But if you're earlier on or you're still interested, let me know. We can make sure you can apply next year. And actually, Charlotte, if you're still on, I had 2 interns that helped me with a GIS project last summer. They actually used QGIS, which I had never used before, but I was super impressed with their ability to dive into that. So we do have internships. Several of our interns have become full-time employees. Several of them have gone on to get masters with us and then, stay around. So that's sort of one of the curses of the lab. We don't get a ton of turnover because once people join, they tend to stick around for a while. But I'm happy if folks are interested or want to learn more as those positions come up. I can pass that information on to you or make sure Casey has it. And then also Casey Trees, I don't work for them officially, but sort of serve as their researcher. They do a lot of cool stuff in the district. They have planting groups, they have education groups, conservation groups. I know they have a GIS department with about 3 people. And I think they're actually going to be hiring soon. So if you want to do GIS related work in DC for a nonprofit, and collaborate with me, I can pass that information on to you. And yeah, I'm pretty sure they'll be hiring for another GIS technician in the near future. So feel free to let me know on that front. But yeah, always looking for people that want to work and are, more than anything, just good, enjoyable people to work around. Because you can learn a lot on the job, but it's great when you actually like working with the people you work with.
Yep. Yeah. I will also say, first, Chris, you are welcome to send any and all positions my way, and I will get them out to everyone. Casey Trees does a lot of posting on Handshake. I cannot guarantee every single position that they ever hire for goes on Handshake for the students out there, but they do post on there pretty regularly. So just know that that's an option too. If you follow them on Handshake, you'll be updated anytime they post a new position. So if you're interested in this type of work, I'd recommend that too. Cool. So any other questions before we wrap up? All right, going once, going twice. Okay. Well, thank you all so much for coming today. Chris, thank you. That was really wonderful advice. Thank you for allowing us to record it. For all the students that are still on the call, I'll be sending out the recording of this conversation to you all so that you can reference it if you have any questions. Chris, are you open to me including your email in that follow-up communication as well? Okay,
absolutely.
Cool. Then I will do that. So thank you all. Happy Friday, happy weekend. And yeah, I hope that this weather clears up quickly. Thanks everybody. Have a good one.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day.